Imagine stepping out of your stunning, sun-drenched Lisbon hotel, just completely ready for the perfect vacation. You take one confident step onto this beautiful mosaic sidewalk, and you just immediately wipe out on a completely dry, flat stone.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't even made it to the cafe yet, and you're already bruised.
It is a rude awakening. And a very, very common one, actually.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a massive stack of material here today. We're talking guidebooks, expat blogs, local vlogs.
So many vlogs.
So many. And they're all focused on Portugal. Because, let's face it, Portugal is having a massive moment right now. It feels like everybody is either going there, just got back, or is actively trying to move there.
It really is the destination of the decade.
Yeah.
But that popularity creates a very specific kind of friction.
Right, because the perfectly curated Instagram reels, they don't give you the ground rules. They just show you the glossy romantic version. So our mission today for this deep dive is to decode these materials and really bypass that superficial tourist brochure. We want to extract the gritty, authentic, and honestly highly practical realities you actually need to know.
Yeah, because Portugal isn't just a sunny backdrop. It's a country of intense, almost whiplash-inducing contrasts. You have a very old, proudly traditional culture that is just colliding head-on with a thoroughly modern, massive tourism boom.
Exactly.
And if you don't understand the underlying mechanisms of how this place operates, you're going to spend your whole trip feeling frustrated, confused, or, like you just mentioned, physically bruised on the pavement.
So let's start right there with the ground beneath your feet, because I was reading through these expat blogs and there are entire threads dedicated entirely to the sidewalks.
Like calcatas.
Right, the calcatas. They are those gorgeous black and white cobblestone mosaics. Why are people so genuinely terrified of them?
Well, it really comes down to geology and time. Those stones are primarily limestone and basalt. And over centuries, millions of footsteps have polished that limestone until it basically acts like glass.
So when it rains, I imagine it's just an architectural slip and slide.
Oh, completely. But here is the bizarre local insight that people don't realize. Even when it's totally dry, the white tiles are significantly more treacherous than the black ones.
Wait, really? The white ones specifically?
Yeah, because the white stones are pure limestone, which softens and polishes much faster than the denser dark basalt. So if you have the option, step on the black tiles. And honestly, you have to rethink your footwear completely.
I saw a lot about that. No flip-flops.
Smooth-soled shoes or flimsy flip-flops are an actual safety hazard in Lisbon. You need serious rubber grip.
And while you're staring at your feet to make sure you don't slip, there was a hilariously consistent warning across almost every local blog we looked at. Watch out for the dog poop.
Yes. Yeah, it is an unfortunate reality of the urban centers right now.
So, eyes down, always. Now, I always pictured Portugal as perpetually warm, just eternal summer vibes. But the weather advice in these guides paints a totally different picture. They're telling people to pack heavy layers in August. Why is that?
Because it's the Atlantic. People tend to lump Portugal in with Mediterranean climates like Italy or Greece. But Portugal faces the open Atlantic Ocean.
Right. It's right on the edge there.
Exactly. And that means the coastal wind, especially in Lisbon or down in the Algarve, is absolutely vicious. The sun might be beating down during the day, but when that wind whips off the ocean in the evening, the temperature just plummets.
And what if you visit in January? Because I saw one vlogger bundled up in a literal winter parka while sitting on her Airbnb sofa.
That is the paradox of Portuguese real estate. A lot of the traditional buildings were built to stay cool in the blazing summer, which means they have these thick stone walls and absolutely zero central heating.
Oh, wow. So you're just trapped in a stone box.
Basically, the winters aren't freezing outside, but the indoor chill and the damp humidity, it just seeps into your bones. If you're renting an apartment in the winter, you will become very closely acquainted with a portable space heater and a dehumidifier.
Okay, good to know. So walking is an extreme sport and the weather is deceptive. Let's talk about getting around. You land at the airport, you're tired, you want a ride. You're probably thinking, I'll just order an Uber. The guides say, don't do it.
Right. The local ecosystem has a much better alternative.
A rideshare app called Bolt, right? From what I gather, it's often the exact same drivers driving the exact same cars, but because of how the market share shook out there, Bolt is consistently 20 to 30% cheaper than Uber.
It's a huge difference.
I just love a good logistical hack like that.
And if you're taking public transit within the cities, the infrastructure is actually surprisingly modern. You don't need to stand at a kiosk deciphering ticket zones anymore.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, you can literally just tap your credit card or your phone on the turnstile and walk right through.
But the guidebooks are very strict about intercity travel. Like, say you want to take the high-speed train from Lisbon up to Porto. They say, do not use those third-party booking sites that aggregate European train tickets.
This is a classic modern versus ancient clash. The official Portuguese rail network operates on legacy back-end systems.
Right.
So when tourists book through a glossy third-party app, the API often just fails to sync properly. You show up at the station, your ticket doesn't scan, and the conductor cannot help you.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is. You have to book directly through the official site, cptp.p.
Okay, so book direct. Let's talk about renting a car, because getting out into the countryside sounds incredible. But the driving culture, one expat described Portuguese drivers as having rally driver blood.
I've heard that one.
Is it really that aggressive, or are Americans just used to wider roads?
It's kind of both, actually. But there's a fascinating sociological reason behind it. For a long time, Portugal's road infrastructure really lagged behind the rest of Western Europe. Then, over the last few decades, they suddenly built this incredible network of high-speed highways.
Okay, so the roads got better.
Right, but the driving mentality hasn't entirely caught up to the safety protocols of a multi-lane superhighway. So you have people treating tailgating as like a casual greeting.
And you're likely doing this in a manual transmission, right? Because automatic rental cars are rare and super expensive.
Yeah, you better know how to drive a stick.
But the biggest headache I saw wasn't even the tailgating, it was the toll roads. The electronic toll system sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare. How does a tourist actually deal with it?
This is crucial. Portugal has overhead electronic gantries on many of its highways that scan your license plate.
So no toll booths where you just throw in some coins.
No toll booths at all. If you just drive under them in a rental car, the fines start multiplying rapidly, and the only way to pay them manually is by navigating the Portuguese post office system days later.
Which literally no one wants to do on vacation.
Exactly. The mechanism you need is called a Via Verde transponder. When you rent a car, you must explicitly ask the rental agency to activate it. They link it to your credit card, and you just drive. It saves you days of administrative headache.
Okay, before we leave transit, there is one unbelievable flight hack we have to mention from the sources.
Yeah.
The TTAP Portugal stopover program.
Oh, it's practically a masterclass in national tourism strategy.
Tell me how this works.
So if you are flying TAP Airlines from the US to, say, Paris or Rome, they allow you to build in a layover in Lisbon or Porto for up to 10 free nights.
Wait, free nights as in no extra airfare?
Zero extra airfare. You are essentially getting 2 European vacations for the price of one flight.
That is wild. Okay, so you've secured your transit, you've survived the cobblestones, you drop your bags and head out into the neighborhood. Now, if navigating the physical roads requires a local mindset, navigating a conversation requires a complete cultural reset.
Totally.
And I'll admit, my first instinct going to Europe is to fall back on the Spanish I learned in high school. But the consensus across all these sources is absolutely do not do that in Portugal.
It is the ultimate tourist trap, and it's an emotional one.
I really want to understand the why here, because to an outsider, Spanish and Portuguese seem linguistically adjacent. So why are locals so deeply offended by a tourist just saying gracias? Is it just friendly national pride, or is there some historical rivalry tourists are blindly stomping all over?
Oh, it's deeply historical. Portugal and Spain have shared the Iberian Peninsula for centuries, obviously, but Portugal has fought fiercely and often brutally to maintain its independence from its much larger neighbor. Most notably, during the Restoration War in the 1600s, after decades of Castilian rule. So when a tourist walks in and assumes Portuguese is just a dialect of Spanish, or that the culture is an extension of Spain, it doesn't just sound ignorant. To many locals, it feels like an assertion of dominance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it basically erases their distinct cultural identity.
So that way it makes total sense why they'd rather you speak terrible English than fluent Spanish.
They absolutely would. And if you are trying to learn a little Portuguese before you go, you have to be careful what app you use. Most global language platforms default to Brazilian Portuguese because the population is just so much larger.
And the difference is that stark. Are we talking slightly different vocabulary or what?
It's like comparing the English spoken in the deep American South to the English spoken in a Scottish pub.
Okay, that's a huge difference.
Right. The vocabulary differs, sure, but the pronunciation is radically different.
Yeah.
European Portuguese sounds almost Slavic to the untrained ear because they swallow their vowels. It's much more guttural and closed.
So if I'm looking at a menu, How do I not butcher the pronunciation completely?
Well, there are a few mechanical rules. That all sound you see at the end of words, it's heavily nasal. You push the sound through your nose, almost like saying ow, but nasally.
Right.
Words ending in O actually make a U sound, and words ending in M make an N sound.
So the word for yes, sim, spelled S-I-M, is actually pronounced sin.
Exactly. And once you have a few words, you really have to use them because the social choreography in Portugal is very specific. In a lot of Western countries, you might wander into a boutique, look at a shirt silently, and just walk out.
Yeah, happens all the time.
If you do that in Lisbon, you're being incredibly rude.
Because you ignored the human in the room.
Precisely. Portugal operates on a village mentality, even in the big cities. Acknowledging people is the required social currency. You must say bom dia for good morning, or boa tarde for good afternoon, whenever you enter a small shop or a cafe.
That plays right into this concept of Portuguese time that all the expat blogs talk about. You have to leave your rush at the border. If you're tapping your foot because the waiter is taking a while, or you're trying to hurry a shopkeeper, you're the one making the faux pas.
Oh, definitely.
Punctuality and speed are just not prioritized over human interaction.
Which brings up a really delicate boundary the guides mention regarding how you interact with locals.
Yeah.
Because the Portuguese love to complain about Portugal.
Okay.
They will passionately dissect their political gridlock, their economy, the infrastructure. But as a visitor, you do not have permission to join in.
It's the classic sibling dynamic. Like, I can make fun of my brother, but if you make fun of my brother, we're going to have a problem.
Exactly. Their national pride is fierce. If a local is complaining to you, your job is to nod sympathetically. Do not chime in with your own critiques of their country.
Okay, let's pivot to my absolute favorite part of any trip, which is the food. Because sitting down at a Portuguese restaurant introduces an entirely new set of unwritten rules. And the biggest point of confusion for North Americans is definitely the couvert.
Yes, the famous disappearing, reappearing bread.
Right. So I sit down at a traditional tasca, and immediately the waiter drops a basket of fresh bread, some local cheeses, maybe some marinated olives on the table. Now, I didn't order it, but if I eat it, I get charged for it. I have to be honest, to my tourist brain, that sets off major alarm bells. It feels a little like a hustle.
Yeah, it does.
So how does the local culture justify that?
It's completely understandable to feel that way, but you should think of it less like a scam and more like the minibar in a hotel room.
Okay, how so?
In the U.S., bread is theoretically free, right? But the restaurant has really just baked that cost invisibly into the $30 price tag of your chicken dish.
That's true.
The Portuguese economic model is relentlessly itemized. Entrees are usually much cheaper, and you only pay for exactly what you consume. The couvert is always listed on the menu with its price. It's put there for convenience because locals expect to nibble while they chat.
Okay.
If you break the seal, if you touch the cheese, you buy it. If you don't want it, you just say, no, thank you, and they whisk it away. No offense taken.
Okay, that mini bar analogy completely reframes it for me. It's just extreme a la carte. Now, timing your hunger is also a strategic game, right? Because dinner is late, usually 8 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Yes. If you see a restaurant that is packed at 5:30 p.m., run.
Run away.
It is entirely populated by tourists, and the food will reflect that.
And the vlogs warn that you can't just expect to eat a late lunch at 4 p.m. either.
No, American 24/7 dining culture does not exist there. Kitchens close hard between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m.
Why is that? Is it a labor law thing, or?
It's partly labor, allowing the staff to rest, but it's primarily a cultural adherence to meal boundaries. Lunch is lunch, dinner is dinner. The time in between is for a coffee and a pastry at a bakery, not a full hot meal.
And when you do finally sit down for dinner, prepare for a very specific kind of feast. From what I read, sharing is the norm. It's super communal. If your local friend reaches across and spears a piece of fish off your plate, that's completely normal.
Oh yeah, personal space with food is different there.
And the diet is unapologetically carb heavy. We're talking meat served with both rice and French fries on the exact same plate.
It's hearty, working class, unpretentious food, which actually brings up an important note for vegetarians and vegans. In Lisbon and Porto, you'll find incredible plant-based options.
Sure, big cities.
But the moment you get out into the interior or the traditional villages, pork and seafood are the cultural bedrock. A vegetarian might find themselves staring at a completely unseasoned lettuce and tomato salad for dinner. You really have to plan ahead.
There was one hyper-specific food ritual I loved reading about, tremocos.
Oh, tremocos.
Yes.
They are these little yellow lupin beans served as a bar snack with beer. I watched a vlog of a tourist popping them in his mouth like peanuts, and the locals at the next table were staring at him in absolute horror.
Because the outer skin is incredibly fibrous and unpleasant, there is a precise technique to tremocos. You bite a tiny tear in the end of the skin, you squeeze the bean so it shoots into your mouth, and then you leave the empty shell on a discard plate.
So don't eat the shell.
Eating the shell is a dead giveaway that you just got off a plane.
It's those little mechanical details that make you feel like you actually know what you're doing. Now, speaking of bar snacks, we have to talk about what you're drinking, because the beverage culture is widely misunderstood. Let's start with coffee. Don't go looking for a giant iced caramel macchiato.
Right, coffee in Portugal is cheap, it's strong, and it's consumed constantly. The standard order is a bica, which is a short, sharp espresso, or a galão, which is espresso with foamy milk served in a glass.
But the biggest myth we need to bust is about port wine. Oh, this is a classic misinterpretation. People visit Portugal, they see port on the map, and they assume it's the national casual beverage.
I definitely would have ordered a huge glass of port to go with my steak dinner.
Which would be like pairing a heavy, decadent slice of dark chocolate cake with your ribeye.
Oh, yuck.
Exactly. It completely overpowers the meal. First off, port isn't even technically aged in Porto. The historic cellars are all across the river in a city called Gaia.
Right.
Second, it is a fortified, intensely sweet, heavy wine. Locals drink it in small glasses as an aperitif, or after a meal with a dessert. They do not drink it casually with dinner.
So what are they drinking with dinner?
Well, if you're in Lisbon, you might start with ginginha, a sour cherry liquor often served in a tiny edible chocolate cup. But the national obsession for the dinner table is vinho verde.
Which translates to green wine, but I saw pictures it isn't actually green.
Right, the green refers to its age. It's a young wine, meant to be consumed soon after bottling. It has a very slight effervescence, it's low in alcohol, and honestly, it is dangerously drinkable on a hot day.
I bet.
But there is a strict mechanical rule for serving it. It must be ice cold, usually served in a chilled sleeve.
Yeah.
If a waiter brings you room temperature vinho verde, you are in a tourist trap that just doesn't care.
That's a great tip. And if you are splitting a bottle of wine with friends, I read about this major superstition. You never, ever pour the last drops of the bottle into your own glass.
Yeah, it's considered terrible luck and incredibly bad manners. You are supposed to offer the best, the final drop, to a friend at the table.
I love that. It's so community focused. And on a purely hydration level, tap water is safe everywhere. But if you sit at a restaurant and just ask for water, they will bring you a premium glass bottle and charge you €3 for it.
Every time.
You have to explicitly ask for tap water. Except, the guide's note, if you are down south in the Algarve, a lot of restaurants there will flat out refuse to serve tap water, so you'll just have to buy the bottle.
So we've covered the physics of walking, the psychology of language, and the economics of dinner. But where do you actually spend your time to experience all this?
This is where we get into hacking the tourist traps. Because the guides provided some brilliant strategies to bypass the manufactured experiences. Let's start with Lisbon. The Santa Justa lift is this beautiful wrought iron elevator in the middle of the city. Everyone wants the view from the top.
But you'll wait in line for 45 minutes and pay €5 for a 20-second elevator ride.
Right. And the hack is geographical. Lisbon is built on incredibly steep hills. You don't actually need the elevator.
Oh, good.
You can just walk up the hill behind the Carmo convent, stroll through a quiet alleyway, and walk right onto the exact same viewing platform at the top of the lift. 0 lines, €0.
So that is the perfect example of understanding the terrain. And then there is the infamous Tram 28.
The yellow tram you see on literally every single postcard.
Right. The guidebooks are practically screaming at people to skip it.
Why is it so bad? I mean, it looks so charming.
Because it's an infrastructural conflict. Tram 28 is actually a vital public utility meant to help elderly locals get up the massive hills with their groceries. But it has been entirely co-opted by mass tourism.
Oh, that's a shame.
So now you have locals trying to get home, crammed next to 40 tourists, leaning out the windows with selfie sticks, making it a prime target for pickpockets. Plus, tourists don't realize it doesn't run in a loop. It terminates, and you get kicked off in a neighborhood you don't know.
Wow. So the advice is to just walk the Alfama district yourself, or if you must ride it, go at 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And speaking of lines, Pastéis de Belém, the famous custard tart bakery, there's always a line wrapping around the building.
That's the takeaway line for people buying boxes to go. Look to the left. There is a smaller entrance that operates almost like a portal. You walk in, and it opens up into these massive, cavernous dining rooms in the back. You can just sit down at a table, order your coffee and your tarts, and skip the hour-long line entirely.
Let's talk about Sintra. It's the fairy tale palace town outside Lisbon.
Yeah.
The biggest mistake people make is treating it as a day trip.
If you take the morning train with everyone else, you will be suffocated by crowds. The strategy is to book a hotel and stay overnight. When the day trippers leave at 5 p.m., you get these misty, romantic streets almost entirely to yourself.
And regarding the famous Pina Palace, the brightly colored one on the top of the hill, every guide said the exact same thing. Skip the interior. It's just a slow-moving, single-file line through underwhelming rooms.
The magic is really the exterior architecture and the sprawling gardens. And don't pay for the shuttle bus from the front gate to the palace doors. It's a completely manageable 7-minute walk.
Or, if you want real magic, hike 45 minutes up to the Moorish castle instead. It's a 10th century ruin winding along the peaks. The guides say it's an incredibly quiet escape into nature, and honestly, you get better views at the Pina Palace from there anyway.
This is the overarching theme for finding authenticity in Portugal right now. You have to look past the heavily marketed zones.
Yeah.
In Lisbon, everyone goes to Pink Street for Instagram, but it's really just a crowded, faded alleyway full of expensive bars.
Right.
Down south, the Algarve beaches are stunning, but the towns are largely populated by English and German expats.
So if I want to practice my newly learned vowel-swallowing European Portuguese, where do I go?
You head to the interior, go to the Alentejo region, visit the city of Evora to see the massive, deeply historic Chapel of Bones, rather than the smaller, crowded one down in Faro, or just leave the mainland entirely. The Azores and Madeira Islands offer staggering volcanic nature without the crush of European backpackers.
So, synthesizing all of this, if the famous spots like the Livraria Lello in Porto or the Baixa district in Lisbon are crowded, do we just ignore the guidebooks entirely?
Not at all. It's about strategic sampling. You don't have to ignore the icons, but treat them as surgical strikes. Go to that famous bookstore the minute it opens, get your experience, and then immediately retreat.
Retreat to the neighborhoods.
Because the true value of Portugal isn't found waiting in a ticketed line. It's found sitting at a quiet Miradouro, a neighborhood viewpoint with a coffee, just watching how the city breathes. Portugal rewards the slow, observant, and respectful traveler. By mastering the transport, understanding the dining economics, and stepping just 2 streets off the beaten path, you transition from being a spectator to an active participant in the culture.
And that brings us to a final, deeply complex thread to mull over. We spent this whole time talking about how to find the gritty, authentic Portugal, but the sources we reviewed constantly referenced something called the Golden Visa program.
Yes, it was an initiative designed to inject money into the country by offering residency to wealthy expats and digital nomads who bought real estate.
And it worked. I mean, it brought a massive flood of foreign money. But the unintended consequence is that it astronomically raised property prices in the cities. It is actively pushing local Portuguese families out of the very historic neighborhoods, like the Alfama in Lisbon, that we tourists flock to because we want to see that authentic local way of life.
It creates a huge paradox for the modern traveler.
Exactly. So here is the question to leave you with. As you use these logistical hacks to seek out those hyper-local, untouched experiences, are you inadvertently participating in the exact economic wave that is eroding that very authenticity? It is a fascinating, tricky dynamic to ponder while you're sipping your ice-cold Vinho Verde on a free viewing platform. Like we said at the beginning, you pull away the glossy Instagram filter and suddenly the picture gets incredibly murky, but it also gets a lot more real.